And that's working. Okay. All right, so we're recording now, and I love that you're wearing your Chewbacca shirt. It's very that's in honor of when we did the Last Jedi. That was two like 3 hour long episodes that we did for a movie that means nothing now. So let's start. For half, yeah. All right, so Jedi Toy Masters here with our special guest. We have JC, who apparently now he's JC, and a lifelong friend. I'm just finding out that he's changing his name again. And his lovely wife Hillary, who have decided to brave the Christmas Eve and discuss a movie that will go down in history as a movie that, oh my gosh, I have no words. This movie has left me almost speechless. So the fact that we're doing a video now where we're going to talk about this movie is a challenge for me.
Wait, and you've already seen it how many?
I saw it twice. So
Okay.
So yeah, so I saw it. I saw it on Thursday with my brother, and I was kind of the total nerd in my, because that night was Thursday was my office Christmas party. So I'm like surrounded by all my coworkers, and they're all like, "Oh, so what are you doing after this?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to head out early." Oh, why? I have to go watch Star Wars with my brother. And I'm like wearing my Star Wars sweater. I didn't, whatever. So anyway, so we went to see it, and we both. Are we just jumping right in? Is that what we're doing?
Let's jump.
We're jumping right into initial reaction. All right, since I'm already talking. I walked out of that movie, and my brother and I were just kind of like, we were like shell shocked. It was like we didn't know what to think. We didn't know what to do. We kept looking at each other, back at the road, looking at each other again, back at the road. And I had to like it was.
Were you more shocked than Last Jedi?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is how I kind of was able to go to bed that night. I said, okay, The Force Awakens was like, I saw it and I couldn't wait to see it the next day because I wanted to experience it again, and I wanted to experience it with somebody else so that we can enjoy it together. Like, that was my feeling. It made me feel good. It was like, wow, Star Wars is back. The Last Jedi I went to go see with my wife, and then immediately after I was like, I need to see this again, but I need to see this again because I don't know, like I need somebody else's input on this. That was
you were confused.
That was my feeling, yeah. So like I saw it with my brother and his wife and their son, my little nephew, and afterwards I was like, what do you guys think? Like, just wanting to like get their input so that I can kind of formulate my own feeling of that movie. And then talking to you also helped. This one, I was like, I need to see this again. I'm so glad we're seeing it the next day. I went to see it with Ange and the boys, and I needed to see it again for no other reason than for myself, for my own sanity. Like, I was like, I need to make sense of this.
Wow, this did a number on you.
It did a number on me. It was the first Star Wars movie that I was afraid to feel. This movie made me scared to feel one way or the other. Like, I'm like, do I love this movie? I can't love this movie. Do I not like this movie? I can't not like this movie. Like, it was really, it really did a number on me.
Is it because it's like the last one and there's nothing after this?
I think so. There was just so much writing on this movie that, but then at the same time, see, this is the tug of war in my head. It means a lot because it's Star Wars and it's the end. But also, on the other side, I don't feel like I care enough about these new group of characters. So it was really more about, like, they better not ruin Star Wars for me. I could care less about, like, I hate to say it like that, but I really could care less about Finn and Poe and even Rey. Like I just needed resolution. I just needed to for there to be some kind of like resolution to all this. Like, what was all of this for? And
Yeah.
in that sense, I was a little disappointed.
Okay.
But on the other side, this movie was like, it was the most Star Warsy movie of the three, I think. Like it had a lot
In
of
what way Star Warsy?
Force Awakens, Star Warsy vibes and emotions and feelings, tingles.
Okay.
But then it also had a lot of just stuff that I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and I was like, all right, I guess this is Star Wars now.
Okay, we're gonna go deeper in a second, but my lovely wife here does have to leave in a moment.
Because of course she actually has a life and she has actually important things to do, not the nonsense of talking about Star Wars.
Right, but so I think she saw one of the prequels, right, back in the day.
Yes.
Do you remember which one?
It was the one with Jar Jar Binks.
Oh my gosh, that was her introduction to Star Wars, right? Yeah, the Phantom Menace. I'm glad she came back. And I don't know if she saw the other prequels or anything else until she married me, right? And then you saw the original.
Yeah.
Yeah. I introduced you first to the original. I reintroduced her
to marry somebody that has never seen Star Wars. You took a leap of faith,
I reached out with my feelings, and there it was. And she's not really into science fiction that much. She kind of likes some fantasy stuff, and she wasn't like in love with it, but she appreciated it. There were some things about it that she liked, and then she went to see. She's gone to trilogy films when it came out. Every time that
plus Rogue One plus Solo.
Right. It's kind of a. We even got a little souvenir the last time we went out. So yeah. So I thought we also were like talking in the car after the movie and slightly different, But I really appreciated like the things that she had to say. I loved her perspective, and so I just wanted to like, what was their initial like coming out of the movie? Did you?
There you've had it, folks. You heard it here first. Yes, says Hillary of the New York Times.
It's interesting because when you come into this Star Wars universe, much backstory. There's so many planets, what have you. There's just, it is a big world to learn about, and so for someone like me who isn't a fiction person, I'm not. World building is not something that fascinates me. I get entertained by it. All of that gets a little into the weeds for me, and so there are things for a new fan, that there are things that I guess make this film feel. Say like the pacing was too fast. There was for me, because I'm not hanging on the weight of every detail. To me, it felt entertaining. Like that's the hallmark of a good.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the action's long, grandiose. They were fun. I really felt interested in the characters, particularly the way in this film. I think I feel like if the film had a problem, that there was a different story in the film before it. Like it seemed that there was what's the middle one called?
Last
Jedi, and this one. And I understand that's because there was a different director. I think that the journey and the way to become more comfortable in her role as the leader was really inspiring to me. You know, there are so few films out there that can look at a character as a role model beyond who has some sort of romantic interest. And even in this one, it's not that's not like the central storyline. And you know, so many of the in Marvel and like Rey is a special leader who happens to be a woman. And I love that. And that's the kind of character that I would love to introduce older. And I also kind of look at it from the perspective of this being a piece of Disney's big machine. They spent how many billions of dollars? They spent a lot of money.
Billions
and billions. Buy Lucasfilms and brought them in. And they had this vision for, you know, the fans of these characters to become, you know, Disney customers, so to speak. But I love that they I don't know if it's updated, but they brought in new characters that look different people. You know, it's not quite characters, and that means that like when we take our daughter to Disney World and we go on rides, like there is someone for her to look at that is that she can identify with. That's not just the damsel in distress, or not just the sassy sidekick. And so the journey that Rey goes on, and also that she's not this perfect Puritan, can do no wrong person either. Like there is some different. There's her as well, and that is what it means to be an actual human being, as opposed to just some sort of like static character. And so I liked that. What else did I?
Yeah, she liked that struggle. You know what I mean? She really saw that. A lot of people mention that Rey don't change in her, and I think I had that feeling too. But the more I've seen the other ones and saw the whole arc, yeah, she doesn't show like maybe as much. But she was really confronted with something about identity, and I think that resonated with her. That like she still moved forward, and even even in this one, she did kind of quit, you know. And we'll get to those details a little bit later, you know, just like Luke did.
Yeah.
But Luke was there to like encourage her, like, you know, I made a mistake. You know, you don't have to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
She definitely is different in this movie than The Force Awakens. Like, I think the biggest complaint with The Force Awakens was everybody called her Mary Sue. That, you know, she's so perfect. There's nothing going on. And you saw, like, once the layers of the onion started to unravel a little bit and peel away, then you saw that she is a complex character. And I think by this one, I don't know if it was intentional or maybe the writers and the creators kind of heard the complaints and kind of designed it that way to make her a little bit more complex and more interesting that way. Because they knew this was the character that needs to carry these movies. This is the new, quote unquote, the new Luke Skywalker for a new generation. You know, so I think it was important to make her a more complex character. And like Luke, she gets tempted towards the dark side, and you see it. And that I really appreciated. I think ultimately the biggest problem that I think fans are having right now is we hold on to the original films so much that it's hard to, like you mentioned Hillary, like that there's so much in the Star Wars world universe to know, but it wasn't like that. Like it used to be just 3 movies and like 3 planets. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's all we knew about Star Wars. It was just this little group of characters, and we were just told that it's a big universe in a long time ago and far, far away, but we never knew of it until all these other movies started to come around, and it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now there's so much of it that I think now it is a little bit overwhelming, because I mean even the most astute Star Wars fan will can turn around and say, wait, that's canon? I didn't even know that existed. And it's like, oh yeah, no, that's in the comic, or that's in an animated show that they introduced that, and you're like, oh really, okay. And I thought I was a huge fan. I didn't even know that. So it's because it's expanded so much. I think that has also made this this phenomenon where, like, I'm a hardcore fan. Like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. Well, like, what are you an expert now? Like, it's become this thing where I think we hold on to it so much that now it's a hard pill to swallow to see what ultimately they did in ending the story that we started, so many years ago.
Well, here's the thing, and you have to go soon, but like, at least us two, we grew up like, so we were watching, we were kids, right? We saw the originals, and then we would play with the action figures, and we make up our own stories. You know what I mean? And in our imagination, we were Luke or Han or whatever, and so we grew up in our formidable years, right? And then as we got older, we started appreciating them for different reasons, and some of the same reasons actually. And so there's something about carrying that 42, but like it's been around 42 years. And when something like that kind of takes a left turn, it was like, whoa, like this kind of helped shape my identity. I looked up to Luke when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and all of a sudden, hair behind his back. You know what I mean? Like that's like, whoa, that was like kind of this, because just like Rey, that was our hero too. You know what I mean? But okay, here you go. Was there like a moment that was most impactful for you?
I mean, there were a few, but the one that comes to mind is after she stabs Kylo Ren and then heals him. To me, that was really, I don't know, to me that was like a moment of like a shift in power and forgiveness and bravery. It was just a lot of like big feels at once. That was really great. Also, the first time, I mean, when her like really crazy power is shown sort of for the first time, when she thinks that they're taking Chewie away.
Yeah.
And then she stops with just the, I guess, with the Force is how you would describe it.
The lightning comes out.
Yes. That was awesome. Because I feel like, even in The Force Awakens, we knew like there was something special about Rey, but it feels like it's taken a while for her to like really exercise that strength and have confidence in it and recognize that's in her. And I mean, I guess it was like the Jedi training and stuff too, but.
So you thought that was a good thing, the lightning thing that blew up the ship?
Well,
it was an impactful moment. It's like, that's that was the question. I mean, that was a big.
That's true.
That was a big moment. Like that got me at first. I the first time I saw that, I sank in my seat and I was just like, did they just kill Chewie? Like, did they just do this? Like, you kind of forget the fact that, holy crap, she just used Force lightning. But yeah,
I turned to her, right? Remember that moment? I was like, wait a minute. Because after the next scene, I was like, wait, is he really dead?
Right.
Yeah,
I was like,
it wasn't
what?
When I saw it the second time is that I noticed that initially there was more than one transport when they were putting Chewie onto it. I didn't catch that the first time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you were to give it a grade from A to F, what would you give
it? No pressure.
I guess. I mean.
Or you could.
Am I grading it again? What am I grading it against? Like all films ever? My personal taste of movies?
No, I mean it's just kind of really arbitrary.
Okay. Well, if it can be arbitrary, I think I would say like B+.
Okay. It's kind of like
I had a good time. And movies that are sort of action oriented, I can zone out. But this, I felt like it was character focused. I felt like the pacing was good. I felt like when there was like a really serious scene and there was something more light and different in the next scene, I really liked all the different spaces that we went into. I liked the characters that we met. I like Carrie Russell, you know.
They had really good acting. Like honestly, like Daisy Ridley was incredible. So was Adam Driver.
Yeah, they definitely. I
Sure.
think that as actors,
Carrie
they
Russell.
matured from the first time we saw them until this one. They've definitely matured. I have some complaints about some of the character choices, but I think ultimately they brought like the A game. They brought their A game as far as acting. Like I think like there was a lot more. This was a lot more. I think like Empire in a sense. This movie was really like felt like Empire and Jedi kind of mashed together. You had the fun and the action of Jedi, and then you had like the emotional and the character and the of
Yeah,
Empire.
yeah. I mean, I think what JJ was trying to do actually was make he did his second movie and third and smashed them
I think
together.
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They could have, honestly, it didn't have to be a trilogy. They could have been 9 and 10.
Yeah, yeah. I heard somebody
But
say that there would be no shame in saying this is such a big story that we can't just limit it to 3 movies. There's going to be an episode 10 so that we can really, they could have done that and we wouldn't have complained. I mean,
And I think that there was some underdeveloped moments in characters, and maybe that was the fault of the writing all along. I don't know, but I never did really feel connected to Finn, like in any of them. And I know you were always kind of a fan of his.
yeah, I mean, I rooted for him. The second one kind of like
yeah, me
threw
neither.
me
I
off.
don't have
But
I have no
the Force
connection with Finn.
Awakens,
Like I almost feel like he should have died in the Last Jedi when he was flying into that in the Battle of
yeah,
Krayt. He was flying into. He wanted to sacrifice himself. I think that would have been great if he sacrificed himself, and because at least give him some kind of arc where he, you know.
However, like I did like kind of the relationship and banter they all had together in this one. Um, but yeah. Well, Dan, any final thoughts before you go?
No.
she's just like everybody else right now. She's just shocked. It's hard to put into words what this movie has done.
I mean, how could a final film
Satisfy.
because so much of this is are big feelings that people developed when they were 8 years old, and you're gonna fulfill and finish that all off 30 some odd years later. I think it's a
Yeah.
hard.
At the
It's
same
hard.
time, though,
And for that, I think
Go ahead.
JJ to him because he gave a good college try.
Though I
Yeah.
applaud JJ in that this movie
So-
didn't this it almost felt like it was directed by somebody else. Like there was a lot of JJ in there, but he kind of expanded his style a little bit. There were I think there was a lot of things that were different that I think he was trying to do different things in this movie.
Yeah.
I just think, like you said, it was like 2 movies in one. Like he's tried to squeeze.
Hammer.
I'm pretty sure there's probably like hours of footage that got cut out of this movie.
You are cracking me up right now. I see your like in your voice, in your face. I see the conflict. Let go of your hate.
No!
Let me down. All right. Thanks for
All
coming,
right.
honey.
Yeah.
How you let me to give you my initial reaction.
Yeah.
And that is I
Yeah.
relaxed.
Yeah.
I very similar to you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, wait, do I like it? Or did I like the last Jedi more? I was really um and, but
Too late.
I think like as I was watching I
Hmm. I agree with. Yeah, me too.
felt like possible. And, but I felt like it's like you
And
have
yeah,
kind of like
and I think the curve is just the fact that we got so many great
you
moments
know
in this movie. Like I was telling my
I
wife,
would
my wife kind of feels the same way. I feel like we enjoyed it, but we were a little just as a Star
I'm
Wars
sick.
nerd, geek, fanboy. It was like I have some hesitation and some disappointments just in like certain things. Like we'll get into it. Like if you're gonna bring Palpatine back, so like ultimately like this feels like it's a Palpatine movie, not a Skywalker movie, and like I have all my
Same.
questions and my doubts. But as a Star Wars movie, it was entertaining. It gave us some great moments. There was definitely some fan service in it, and it's
As possible.
it was a fun movie. Like George
Just
Lucas
to throw,
always
I
said,
give it
faster, more intense,
a
and
B
this
minus.
movie was faster and more intense. So it's just really once you start breaking it down, like every time I wanted to complain about this movie, I feel like the movie just kind of like went, no, here's a big spoonful of sugar, and you're yummy. And then all of a sudden, like it sinks in again. Wait a second, but this doesn't make any. Here's another spoonful of sugar, And I feel like that's what this movie kept doing to me as a fan. It wasn't. It wasn't. It's not a bad movie. It's a well-made movie. I think the script is solid. I think the story is solid. It's the problem is that they forced so much into this movie in order to really make it make sense with what we had seen already in The Force Awakens and especially with The Last Jedi. And in a lot of ways, this movie really, I mean, I'm gonna say it retconned a lot of The Last Jedi. Like it really tried to. I mean, I think it really tried to maneuver its way. And that's the problem. See, like if the internet didn't exist, we would watch this movie and just enjoy it. But because the internet exists, and because we know that these movies were written one at a time with no real overall, vision for it, that what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi kind of made complicated things. Because now JJ comes back and he's like, well, if I was going to continue the story, this is probably not what I was going to do. But now I'm going to have to use what was done and kind of maneuver around it to kind of make it make sense and get here to this destination. I hear you, and you're a little bit kind of buffery, but I think that's just the nature of just doing the Skype thing. But we're good. I mean, there's a couple of scenes. I mean, first of all, the character of Rose, they basically Jar Jar Binks her. They they kind of I think they were kind of forced to just not give her a prominent role. That's for one. And then when Rey throws the lightsaber, about to throw the lightsaber into the fire, and Force Ghost Luke catches it. I mean, he like basically winks at the camera and says like, "You got to respect this. I'm not going to throw this over my shoulder again." Like that was really like a jab, I think, at it. And you can say, well, no, now he has a better appreciation for it because he admits that he made a mistake. But even the character of Luke in the movie admitting that he made a mistake is almost like saying, we made a mistake in The Last Jedi. Yeah.
Happening. Can you see?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
One of these is retcon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah. No. I get it. I get it. So okay, wait. Let's do this. Let's get through these thoughts, these questions, and then at the end we can talk about the things that the things that we would, I guess, poke at. So uh, from you mentioned like impactful moments. I think one of my favorite moments in the movie was the character of Kylo Ren really grew on me in this movie. Like I know in the last movie it was really like a Kylo Ren and Rey's story kind of simultaneously going, and it was like that in The Force Awakens too. But I think in this one, that moment when he kind of has that vision of Han Solo, that really got me. Like that was really good. I think that was a really good scene, echoing what happened in The Force Awakens, but at the same time also kind of um, it's almost like you had to get Harrison Ford to come in here and give the okay. It's okay to forgive him because I think you needed to do that, and I don't know what Harrison Ford got to do that cameo, but I don't know what they did to get him to be in it, but you needed that. You needed Han Solo, even if it's just like in his memory, because it wasn't a Force ghost. Even if it was just like in his memory of his dad, he needed to kind of come to terms with that and know that his father does love him and does forgive him. Because that's what that moment was at the end, right before Han Solo falls in The Force Awakens. He puts his hand on his face, and that hand on the face was basically this conversation of him saying, and I love that Ben breaks down and finally calls him dad and doesn't have the power to apologize, and Han just looks at him and says, "I know," and I love that callback to the "I know." Um, yeah, he says "I know," which is great.
Moments to me too. I didn't tear up. I got like Hillary. She kind of laughed out loud, but not in like, oh, that's stupid or funny. More like,
Don't die on me,
oh my
kid.
god. More in just
Yeah,
surprise, just like, oh my,
yeah,
and but like, as I love the fact that it was exactly pretty much line for line, the scene of Force Awakens on a catwalk. This is like him imagining this is what I should
yeah,
have done, and the only difference though, and I didn't notice this the first time, I just saw this like on Twitter. While I was watching it, I knew like I was like, oh, this is exactly line for
hmm,
line, and in The Force Awakens, he goes to touch him with his right hand on his
yeah.
face, but in this one, he went on his with his left hand,
Oh, that's true.
and and I didn't catch this. I caught that watching this, right? I was like, oh, that's different. But what I didn't catch was that his scar was no longer on that side. Like he went to touch the side with his scar, and the scar
Well,
was
yeah. Well, the
gone.
scar disappears when Ray heals him, which I missed the first time, and on my second viewing, I noticed that like when he's finally healed, he's looking at Ray and he's breathing. You literally see the scar start to vanish on his face, almost like signifying that she didn't just heal him from that wound. She's kind of healed. She kind of like because it's a little bit of her force energy into him, and I think that really was able to almost like tame his hate and the dark side in him. So I think that as far as impactful moments, that was definitely an impactful moment. That kind of like that pause from the fight to really look at each other and say, what are we fighting for? And
Well, that moment when I think both Leia and Ray both simultaneously kill Kylo
yeah,
Ren. So because Leia reaches out, and at that moment, that's when she stabs him. Leia dies, right? And you could tell like Kylo Ren's expression is
yep,
different there. His mannerisms are different, and I think that's when Ben is reborn in
yeah,
that moment. And then that's the only after he's Ben is when he can think of his dad
hmm
and replay that and make that decision and then that decision to throw the his lightsaber, that's it, that's this point of like where Ben is really
yep,
there, you
yep.
know.
Um, thoughts on thought on Ray and the big reveal. That was one of the biggest theories out there. People were saying she's a Palpatine.
From the Force
Yeah,
Awakens.
it was like she's a clone. She's related to Obi-Wan, or she's related to Palpatine somehow, or a clone of Palpatine. And so the fact is, they said she's the granddaughter of Palpatine, which is fine. But if we're going to nitpick, it's like, okay, so when the heck did Palpatine have a kid? When did he have? Like, I'm assuming that he had a son. He had this son before the events of Episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then this son obviously grew up and was maybe in his 20s, 30s by the time A New Hope happened, and then has a daughter maybe later in life. So the math could add up, but it's like unless you really know the history of Palpatine, like in the comics, where you find out that the Palpatines are kind of like they're like they're a rich family. They're kind of not royalty, but they're of money, and that's how he
Mm-hmm.
got into politics and stuff. Then you have to kind of really understand. But then see, my problem with all of that is that now this really becomes Palpatine's story more and about his lineage more so than Skywalker, because really the only Skywalker in this movie is Ben, and he's really a solo. Um, so it's you don't have Leia, you don't have Luke, you just have Ben, and then for him to die, then you leave Rey, and then she takes his name at the end. She takes the Skywalker name at the end. It's kind of like the ultimate insult to kind of like destroy Palpatine. But then really all along, this has been Palpatine's story. I feel like episode 6 was basically Anakin, Darth Vader finally becoming Anakin again and being redeemed and bringing a balance to the Force in his generation. And then the rest of the story was really about almost like it was really basically about Palpatine. So I have mixed feelings about it. Like I really was ready for Rey being a clone. Like I was ready for
Uh,
that. I was ready
I
for
was I was
Rey being some
yeah.
kind of clone where Palpatine has been experimenting all along, and you could even tie in the whole Baby Yoda thing, and you can tie in all this stuff, in Luke's hand, because the lightsaber came from somewhere, so that hand had to have been somewhere. So maybe at the end it would have been that she's some kind of clone or something. But all right, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. I guess that's how you justify bringing Palpatine back, really.
Yeah, see. I watching it, I didn't feel this is Palpatine's story. I didn't feel that. I felt it was Rey's story. But all along, I felt it was both simultaneously Rey and Kylo Ren's
Yeah.
story. All along, I just felt like that was the case. Excuse me. I didn't think about like the timeline. That didn't really bother me. It didn't have an emotional. It didn't resonate with me emotionally when the like. I think the movie set it up like a big reveal, and it wasn't. It was like, oh, okay,
Right,
kind
because
of.
really, yeah, because they show these flashbacks of like her and her parents. So it's almost like the movie was already priming you for it. It was almost like preparing you for this reveal that really wasn't really that impactful because it was like, oh, the big reveal is the fact that Palpatine is back, which we kind of knew already going into this movie, but it was still kind of a reveal because you didn't know, what is it? Is Kylo Ren going to be with work with Palpatine? Is Palpatine and his secret empire going to go against the First Order? Like I thought that would have been more interesting if Palpatine comes back and he has his own empire, basically, that with Sith troopers and all these new type of troopers, and they go to take down the First Order, and you end up having the Resistance caught in the middle of like a civil war between these two evil forces that are just thinking about themselves. That's that's what evil is all about, like the selfishness. Like I thought that would have been a little bit more interesting, but to me, the fact that he has this like fleet of star destroyers and each of them has a freaking laser blaster that's basically a mini Death Star. I think that was like you didn't need that.
Did not
Not
need
another
that
not
at
another
all.
Death Star scenario. A fleet of 1,000 star destroyers would have been enough. That's imposing
Right.
enough because the First Order's army or whatever, they got diminished a lot. They lost Starkiller Base, they lost a Dreadnought in the last Jedi, and they've lost a lot of battles against the Resistance. So I think they were evenly matched at this point. Like even though the Resistance was like ending, but in this movie, the beginning, you're kind of told, well, no, it's starting to gain momentum again. So I think that would have been a little bit more interesting, but I don't know why they keep doing that. They always have to have the bad guys with this like, we gotta take out this ultimate weapon that they have. Like, if you had the ability to put laser beams, laser cannons on star destroyers that could destroy planets, why the heck did you make a Star Killer base? Why did you allow that? Because if he see, this is the thing. This is the problem. You can enjoy the movie at face value, but once you think about it a little bit, it starts to fall apart a little bit in a lot of areas. There's a lot of cracks in it. As entertaining as the movie was, and I'm not saying that I didn't like it because I did like it. It's just that the more you look at it, you see all the cracks in the foundation.
Well, I see your point on like when as far well J.J. Abrams. I'm assuming he did it to raise the stakes, right? To make it feel like, oh my gosh, they have to put a stop. So I agree with you. That's not needed. But as far as the cracks are concerned, and you make why need a Star Killer base if you have all this? Um, the reason is because they hadn't thought about it yet. They hadn't had a whole story arc.
Right. Yeah.
That's the
That's the
problem.
problem. Yeah. And I think that's the problem that fans are having. That you have this baggage of knowing this ugly backstory of the fact that George Lucas hasn't been happy with these. He already had his outlines. They threw him in the garbage. You have all these directors. You have Colin Trevorrow who basically wrote this movie, and then he left, and then they basically threw out what he had written, and now JJ had to rewrite it. So it's like when you know all this, it's hard to really enjoy this trilogy, knowing that there was no vision. They just basically made it up as they went, and
I would have been I would have been happy if either just JJ did the whole thing, or if thing.
or if JJ directed the first one, but then if he was like a producer and a writer for all the rest of them, so that way, I mean, George Lucas wrote all of them, and there were different directors on each of them, and
Right.
and that was fine. So it's just they just I don't understand why they have a story group, and it just seems like they're not even using the story group. Like I don't know what the story group does like that because they made this trilogy without having an overall vision of what the beginning and the end of the story was going to be. Now, Kathleen Kennedy and JJ have gone on interviews saying, yeah, no, we always knew that we wanted to bring Palpatine back. Colin Trevorrow was not going to bring Palpatine back. Rian Johnson never even thought of that. You know, he didn't even know who Snoke was. That's why he just killed him off, because he just didn't. He was like, well, no, I want the story to be different. I think Rian Johnson wanted Kylo to be the ultimate bad guy in the movie, in the story. You know, so and kind of just throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing and make it different. And you got to respect them for that. But it just seems like this is what happens when you don't plan ahead, basically, which is kind of crazy when you spend all this money on Star Wars and then you don't really plan a full story.
And
I know you get choked up because it's, you know.
We're gonna have to end this up soon, I think. But I think that and that's my biggest complaint of this film. Is that watching it, you saw like, okay, when you saw episodes 4, 5, and 6. In episode 4, you heard in that board meeting that the Emperor just dissolved the Senate, right? In Empire, you heard about the Emperor, and we saw him once. Then finally, Return of the Jedi, he does make an appearance, right? So all along, you're building up to this, right? Now, for this new sequel trilogy, okay, if they had been planning all along, then you would have seen seeds of that. They didn't have to say his name, but you would have felt like his presence is like something more to this, and you would have been able to see a whole through line. So when Rey does find out that she's a Palpatine, we as the audience are like, you either would be like, I knew it all along, and we were dreading that, or you'd be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like you would have a more visceral reaction because they've been playing with that the whole time.
Yeah. Okay, so before we move on, I'll just say this: I totally agree with you. Force Awakens should have ended with like almost like a cliffhanger or a tease, hinting that Palpatine is back. You know, like the dead speak, a broadcast has been made. Like, first of all, the opening crawl was probably the least Star Wars-y opening crawl, because everything that this opening crawl told you had nothing to do with what had happened in the past. It was basically telling you what was going to happen in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And even though it told you what's going to happen in the first 10 minutes of the movie, it didn't really happen the way the crawl said. Because the crawl says that this broadcast has been going out, but meanwhile the Resistance doesn't find out about it until they get the secret message from the traitor of the First Order. And so anyway, definitely they should have planned it out better. We'll do this quick. Ready? Leia's scenes in the movie, how they incorporated her into the movie. Did you like it? Did you not like
it? You skipped the themes question. We got to go back to themes, but that's okay. As far as Leia, I'll have to. I was impressed with what they had to work with. It worked with me, I would say maybe half the time it worked for me. And about the other half, I kind of try to go along with it. You could tell that like some of the responses were really vague. It didn't quite fit that well. Like in the script it fit, right? But like the acting wasn't like, you're not really talking to Rey now, are you? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like that.
The first time I saw it, I think it worked. Second time, you start to see the cracks.
Oh, that's a shame. But listen, JJ had an impossible task in front of him. This was supposed to be her film. I bet like she was going to be training her throughout the film, right? But like, so he and then Rian Johnson painted him into a corner too.
Yeah.
So, and that's not necessarily Rian Johnson's fault. You blame the producers. They're the overseeing everything, right? Yeah. They don't have to. And so that's why I feel kind of bad for Rian Johnson. He gets a bad rap, and I think he did the best he could with what he had. It just didn't fit altogether. Yeah. So, but sorry, not to get back on that, but I did like one of my favorite moments because I didn't get to share all my impactful moments, but one of those was when Luke and Leia were training.
That was
like
cool.
back in the day.
That was really cool. Man, if they can somehow, the technology is getting better, I would love like a move. Just give us one movie that has to do with like them in between Empire.
There's gonna be a
Oh man, it would have been great. It would have been great. I would love that. So I enjoyed her scenes. I think they did the best they could with what they had. I mean, that's all there is to it. How do you what about how they treated Luke? What do you think of Luke in this movie?
Well, we got in touch on it a little bit before. Honestly, I would have liked to see a little bit more of him.
Yeah, me too.
When in Last Jedi, when I said "See you around, kid,"
yeah,
like I thought that he was gonna like haunt him, to some degree. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah, it would have been great.
I think
it would have been great if every time you see Kylo Ren trying to use the Force to communicate with Rey, or like when he has Vader's helmet or whatever, it would have been great if like, boom, all of a sudden you start seeing Luke's Force Ghost popping up. Like if Luke's Force Ghost was the thing that kept poking at him to ultimately make him realize. So that's that scene with Rey when she heals him. Then it's like ultimately he finally gives in to the things that Luke has been saying, and remembers his father, remembers Han.
Yeah, that when Han first said something like "Hey kid," or I thought at first that was Luke. The first time I saw it. Anyways, I would have loved to see more. I think they did treat him well, and I felt like I don't know. I think they dealt well with him.
Yeah. What?
Hold on. Let's go back to themes.
Okay.
What themes
did you like?
I want to go to this because I was listening to a podcast. I forget. I think it was called. I'm looking at my notes over here. Star Wars Report podcast, episode 415, and they start the podcast with like kind of this. Not quote, but like kind of like this poetry. It rhymes, and like these themes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And like kind of like poetry, right?
Yeah.
I love that. A scavenger faces her legacy. Now, so I think that's feels like that's pointing to both Luke. I mean, no, not Luke. Both Rey, Anakin, because Anakin was kind of like he was a slave. He kind of like scavenged for parts, and so I kind of like it mirrors that. A father redeems his son. You saw Luke do that with Vader. Now Han with Ben. A mother gives her last. Now that was I don't remember really seeing that films. You could argue
Padme gave her last breath to give birth to the twins. The New Hope.
That's true.
The New Hope.
That's true. And a lost brother reclaims his true legacy. Where was lost brother? It's talking about who is that talking about?
Lost brother reclaims legacy.
I guess I feel like it's talking. Oh, Luke. That's talking about Luke.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because like he left. He left Jedi Order and then came back.
Yeah. Which
Uh,
Obi-Wan did the same thing. Obi-Wan was in exile. He came back. You know,
right.
one last adventure.
So I think, like, kind of seeing the broader themes, you got to give it to JJ for kind of
Yeah.
weaving up.
It's. I mean, it's true. At the end of the day, it was a huge feat, and he said in an interview I was reading today. He said, you know, that I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said like, you're crazy if you think I was going to be able to please everybody. You know, like it's impossible. It's an impossible task to please everyone, especially Star Wars fans. So
Yeah.
you know, he did the best he could. At the end of the day, we can nitpick at it, and there's a lot of things that did bother me, but they're more part of. I think it's more the things that bother me are things that they either needed to add or subtract that they probably couldn't because otherwise it would make the movie two movies or a 4 hour movie.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the what themes that I like. I mean, dude, honestly, the Kylo Ren and Han Solo moment was huge to me. Fathers and sons. I think that's. I mean, that's really what the original trilogy was all became after Empire. It became a father
Mhm.
and son redemption story, and
Mhm.
so was that. Um, that really impacted me a lot. Um, you know, the other thing that I have mixed feelings about is the ending. I mean, I'm jumping here, but
Oh, let's
where
do it. Let's
when
get into it.
Palpatine says, you know, I am all the Sith, and then Rey says, well, I am all the Jedi. First of all, we'll put this over here. That really reminded me of Endgame, where you know Thanos is like, "I am inevitable," and then Tony Stark says, "And I am Iron Man." It's almost like, okay, this is the same, but I get it. It was a powerful statement. My biggest complaint with that is that the biggest missed opportunity in this entire movie for me, say what you will about like them not really fully explaining how Palpatine is back or really fully explaining the purpose of Snoke. It was just kind of vague. It's left vague, and it's probably going to be explored in comic books and whatnot. But you brought back all these amazing actors to voice their characters as Jedi, and you hear these voices. You hear Ahsoka, you hear Anakin, you hear Qui-Gon, you hear Obi-Wan, you hear Mace Windu, and other female Jedi from the Clone Wars and stuff. But like, I think it would have been so much more impactful if right at the end, you know, they're all saying we're with you, Rey. You don't have to see all of them, but the reality is, Anakin says, "Bring balance to the Force as I did, Rey." That's what he says. It would have been great if at the end, when she takes both lightsabers and she's, you know, deflecting, she's in defense as a Jedi should be. She's not attacking; she's defending herself. Um, if you would see Anakin appear. If Anakin would have appeared and been that last push, because you know what, man? If there's anybody that should be pissed off that that Palpatine is alive, it's Anakin, man. Like Anakin was duped by Palpatine, and he lost his life. He was Darth Vader. He was like encased in this prison for so many years, and finally at the end he was able to, you know, kind of maybe not, I guess, not defeat him, but at least save his son. Really, maybe Return of the Jedi was really more about Darth Vader saving himself and saving his son, and just kind
Yeah.
of like pushing Palpatine away for a minute because that's really what happened. Now he really didn't die. Um, so
Right.
so really, man, like if it would have been great to see Anakin be the one that kind of that just, you know, damn, like you ruined my life, and you know, no, I'm gonna give that final push to Rey and help defeat you. You know.
I like that. I like what's the way to Deezy, and I felt like
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, but I could see how it would be even more impactful if it was just Anakin.
Yeah.
Um, man, I don't know if we have time to go through.
Well, let me.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
want I want to say a few things. All right, just moments. Right, we talk about most impactful. It's kind of the same thing, but my best moments were Ben and Han, Ray giving Ben Luke's lightsaber at the end when they did like that force.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
Uh,
Yes.
transportation.
Yep.
And then he shrugs like Han
Yep.
does in Return of the
There's two
Jedi.
Kylo Ren moments that I really enjoyed. I love the fact that I don't know if it was foreshadowing Ben Solo's return, but you saw Kylo Ren act. There's a scene where Kylo Ren literally is acting like Han Solo, and that's
Really?
when they're on when the Hux and that other guy, General Peer, whatever his name is, Pyre, when they're talking to Kylo Ren, and Hux says something like, "Oh, should we do this? Should we do this?" And Kylo Ren in the mask just points the finger, and that's a Han Solo moment. That's like when when he's just like,
True.
like he does that. That's a Han Solo moment. And then when Ben is fighting the Knights of Ren and he gets the lightsaber, he does a Han Solo like he gives a little this in that moment, and that's the totally Han Solo from Return of the Jedi when all the Ewoks are helping him and all the stormtroopers are thrown, and he just kind of gives one of those.
A good moment. It was such a split second.
So
it was
those
such a good
little
moment.
tiny moments like that, I think were great. That they were intentional. They were talked about, thought about, and I think that elevated the movie. Obviously, at the end when you hear all the Jedi speaking, that was a great moment. I just wish, they such a missed opportunity not having. If you had Hayden Christensen come back and you had him record these lines, you had George Lucas brought Hayden Christensen back to be the Force Ghost and redo that ending in Return of the Jedi. Why not bring him back here?
Who knows? They actually could have recorded it and it didn't work. Like
maybe,
who knows?
Yeah, maybe who knows? Yeah, that's true. Maybe this movie also I think suffers from the fact that I think the pacing suffers a little bit because it is very intense and very quick, and you're jumping from this to this to the end.
It's too much. You get no moments of rest.
I think it's because there's probably like a 4-hour cut of this movie. I think the initial cut of this movie was probably so long. They probably cut so much. I mean, you barely get to know Zori Bliss, Kerry Russell's character. There's characters that were introduced that you don't really see the whole C-3PO with Chewbacca's band. I think there's a whole action sequence where C-3PO is using Chewbacca's bowcaster that was hinted on. It's hinted at with the toys. It's hinted at in the trailers, and there's nothing like that. They just completely cut that out. I think that subplot they completely cut out of the movie. There's a character.
He was C-3PO. C-3PO was really utilized well in this.
You got to see R2, but it's still not enough. I feel like they need to be more R2. There's a lot of characters, just a lot of creatures also that were introduced that they didn't really get a lot of screen time. I mean, that big slug creature, Klaus, that you see him on the Millennium Falcon. Yeah. They mention that character a lot in a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. You barely see him in the movie. I love Babu Frick. That little guy is awesome.
Oh my gosh, he was one of my favorite new characters.
I mean, one of my things that I didn't really like, again, I don't really care for Finn that much, and it was a shame that they I feel like they just kind of put Rose on the back burner and they kind of stayed away from their relationship that was hinted at the end of Last Jedi, and then this new character, Jaina, that's introduced. It's almost like they were like, well, we need to have Finn have a new love interest, and we need her to be more likable, more of another character. So you know what? Let's make her a African American woman that was also a stormtrooper, just like him, and that's their bonding moment. I feel like they kind of, and you don't really see. There's probably so much footage of her that was cut because you don't really get any story development with her either.
You know what though? That's true. However, again, I think this is one of the threads that JJ took from
Yeah.
Last Jedi. Because Ryan Johnson was, get away from bloodlines, raise nobody, or like for whatever, right? And let's like there's because actually, to be honest, JJ hinted.
But then that's also something that was completely.
And
I mean, again, you would end up with like a 4-hour movie, but like Ryan Johnson set up the fact that there's other kids, that there's kids out there that are force sensitive, and yet this movie doesn't even touch on that. I mean, the movie ends with Rey basically going to Tatooine and bearing the lightsabers there, which really don't mean anything. I mean, Luke never wanted to live there. Anakin never really lived there. Leia never even visited that place. So that place doesn't really hold that much, in my opinion. You know, if anything, she should have. There should have been a scene where she puts those lightsabers like on a wall somewhere, and she turns around, and now she has like some young Padawans, some students that are like, oh, you know, one day you're gonna build your lightsaber just like Master Leia and Master Luke did, you know, and now she's teaching a new generation. I mean, something like that. That ending,
you really,
I didn't particularly like that. I mean, first of all, if you're gonna see Ghost Luke and Ghost Leia, why not? Where's Anakin? Where's Ben? You know, Ben Solo disappeared. He sacrificed himself and disappeared in the Force, which nobody taught him how to do that. But you know, we're not going to talk about that. You know, like I don't know.
Bro, I gotta stop you. I gotta stop you. That moment. Okay, so one of my worst moments was the rain.
Yeah, that was awkward.
That shouldn't have happened. I think it should have been like a hug, kind of like how Jyn Erso and what's his name? Diego Luna's character. I can't think.
Cassian.
How they hugged before they died. Cassian Andor.
Yeah. Or maybe, they're going to kiss, but they can't because that's when he kind of like he dies, like his life, and you know, like a tragic kind of like, oh, you know, we'll never have that, but you know, but like a mutual respect. Like it could have been played out. It could have played out a lot better. That kiss was a little bit too forced, I feel.
Did people laugh at your screening?
No, I don't even remember if they. I don't think they did.
Bro, people were dying laughing when they kiss and then he falls back and dies. They were like laughing. And I heard a podcast and in this podcast they mentioned that too. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wow. This must be going on.
Yeah.
Like this must be eliciting laughter.
I don't know how they let that scene stay in like that, because it does play out very weird. Like they kiss and he smiles and then all of a sudden he just falls back. I mean, it didn't really make sense. I didn't particularly like Poe's character in this movie. I don't know. I feel like like Oscar Isaac is such a great actor, and yet in these movies I feel like he's overacting. Like I feel like he's hamming it up. Like everything is like cheesy. Like he's either overly mad or overly excited or overly jokey. Like everything is like over the top with him. And I think the only real moment that I saw him in this movie is when he realizes that they may not. When he's in the TIE fighter, in the X-wing, and he realizes that everybody's dying and nobody's coming to help, and he realizes, oh my gosh, this is the end, and he says, I'm sorry. Like that's the only moment that felt genuine with him. Everything else just felt again, forced. I feel his relationship with Finn, I feel, felt more like how those two actors are in real life, more so than how these two characters would be. And we never find out what Finn was going to tell Rey when they thought they were going to die, and
That annoyed
and
me.
like you never, there's no like, yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of little.
I, I think that he was gonna tell her that he's force
Well,
sensitive.
because he feels it when she
Or-
apparently almost dies. He immediately feels
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And maybe that's a deleted scene. There's a bunch of deleted scenes where he was going to
Yeah.
explore that some more. Or you know what? They probably they probably left a lot of loose ends like that because you know what? They have Disney Plus now, and they're gonna do all these
Yeah.
shows that are gonna come down the pipeline, exploring kind of some of these themes. If not with the actor who played Ray, I mean Finn, then
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Before we get into some other nitpicks,
all right.
let's talk about the music, because I think the music makes the movie. And I was listening to a little bit.
We'll close with this.
All right, you want to close with the music? All right. Well, let's see. What else do we have? What did you like? The film American. I think we talked about JJ, what he did with the movie. I mentioned, some of the things that I wish were different. I think Palpatine should have been explained a little bit more. These are some of my questions. I'm going to throw these out there because these are some of my nitpicks. You could either agree with them or disagree with them, and then we'll end on the high note, which is the music, because that's always great. How did Palpatine actually survive this? Like, was that a clone? What we saw? What we saw, was that a clone? Did he transfer his essence when he died? Apparently, because he did say, "I've died before" in the movie. So did he transfer his essence to that thing? Like, how did that happen? And I'm sure it's going to get explained in a comic. Where the heck was Lando this whole time?
Right.
That was kind of
That
weird.
bothers
Like,
me.
it was great to see him in the movie, but then at the same time, it was like, what? Where the heck have you been, dude? Like, you're a general. Like, what are you retired now? The universe is falling apart. Would you move to Florida? Like, what's going on? It was a shame that they didn't incorporate R2 a little bit more, but they did in the beginning, and who knows if there's deleted scenes with him. Snoke was another big one. But who was Snoke ultimately? Why was he even created? We see a vat of Snokes in a jar in the beginning of the movie, but it's like, what was he for? Like, was Palpatine controlling him? Is he just some kind of like puppet, or did he have a thought of his own? Like, what the heck? What was it? What was his purpose?
That's what they insinuate. They insinuate that he was a
Yeah,
puppet.
but it's just, again, I mean, there's comic books now where you see Snoke training Kylo Ren, so it's like, was Palpatine the whole time? I mean, it's just weird. The whole thing with Palpatine having a son and the timeline, that kind of threw me off a little bit, because I started thinking about it, and the teleporting objects through the Force, as cool as it looks on screen, where was this? Where has this power been?
See, that didn't bother me. Because one, Ryan Johnson kind of already, the connection that they had, he started establishing that. When and when they would, Kylo feels like his hands are wet from the
Yeah. I
rain.
mean, I get it.
And
I'll
you see
chalk it up
that.
to the fact that this is an anomaly in the Force because of how connected those two are. Well, I'll leave it at that. He's the grandson of the Chosen One. She's the grandson of the ultimate evil. I'll chalk it up to that. Oh man, Hux, that character, General Hux, completely wasted.
Well, I think Ryan kind of ruined him, kind of making him so
But it could have been
slapstick.
redeemed. I feel like they should have switched the roles with General Pyre and Hux. Like, I think Hux should have been the one to discover that this other guy is the actual mole and killed him, to kind of elevate his character a little bit more. Like, he's so hell-bent on, you know, like taking control of the First Order, that when he finds out this other guy is the actual mole, he kills him. And yeah, he hates Kylo Ren, but his love for power and ultimate control is far greater. That's why I think the whole Civil War with the First Order and Palpatine's Empire would have been a very really interesting, you know. But anyway,
All right, we gotta do a part two. We gotta do a part two because we get going. Let me just say, the music I thought was phenomenal. I actually haven't heard it. I'm looking forward to doing that. Um, the reason why I say it's phenomenal, honestly, I didn't notice it that much, and that means to me that like it's really moving the story
Yeah.
along. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That makes sense. Like it's not, but at the same time, there were certain moments, and for me, the most poignant moment was when they were on the Death Star 2, and you see them in the throne, or what is it? The room, right? Where they, and you hear the same music when
Darth Vader,
Vader is dying.
Yeah. That's almost like the song music. It almost means discovery. Like there's the music of discovering something. Like, you know, that's when Vader dies and he's unmasked, and you see him, and this is Rey kind of like unmasking that throne room and figuring out. Although I had problems with that too. I mean, like, how did that Wayfinder survive that?
Oh, okay. Again, like, listen, there's so many. Like, one of my biggest complaints was the dagger, but we'll get into it.
But anyway,
time.
The music. I haven't heard the entire soundtrack. I've only I think listened to like the first maybe 6 tracks. But from what I hear, I like it. I mean, obviously, John Williams is a genius. At this point, he's got to be running out of ideas because he's done so many of these Star Wars movies. I think one of the things that I wish had been done a little bit more, and I think maybe it's just John Williams trying to really stay true to his ability to create themes, you know, in these movies. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more callbacks. I mean, there were some callbacks to the original, but you have this rich library of music already from the prequels all the way to the original trilogy. Like, there was a lot of new themes that I think almost weren't necessary. Like you know, like the chase in the desert. There's a completely new theme for that, and I'm like, did you really even need to do a new theme for that? You could just really repurpose any chase scene from Star Wars, and it would have made the scene feel Star Wars. You know,
right?
But ultimately, you know, these are just nitpicks. I love John Williams. I love the music. His cameo was great.
Oh, I missed that. I read about it, but I look forward to seeing that again.
So this is what we're going to do. You're going to go see it again, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to finish this talk. How about that?
Sounds like a plan.
So if you're watching this live, thanks for watching. If you're watching this later, hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, and don't forget to like and subscribe and catch part 2 of this reaction review for The Rise of Skywalker. JC, any final thoughts? That's good. I am recording. All right.
Still recording?